On this episode of Game Shack, I'm going to take a look at Fast and Furious from Arcade1up and ask if it is worth the money, if there's anything about this cab that makes it special, and what effect this is going to have on Arcade1up moving forward through the rest of this year. All that and more coming up next. Hey everybody, welcome on back into the Game Shack. I am your host, JDV. Thanks for stopping by. A little bit of housekeeping notes. Episode 4 of my virtual pinball cab build should be coming out in the next few days, as well as an episode talking about why virtual pinball might actually be better than real world pinball. So keep your eyes open for that if you dig pinball games. Okay, that out of the way, let's take a quick look at Arcade1up's Fast and Furious, run down some of the basic specs of the game, and whether or not this is something you should take a look at, and also maybe a little bit of a hot take on what this means moving forward. Okay, right off the bat, I do not actually own Fast and the Furious, although I might down the line. I'll talk a little bit whether or not I'm going to pick this cab up at the end of the video. I'm basing this on the stats that we know from it and reviews from people I respect, like She Lion, 19K Fox, PD7, and basically every other video that is available on this cab I've taken a look at, and so that's kind of what I'm basing this on. Also, I do own one of the 3 racing cabs that Arcade1up has put out, the Outrun cab, and you can check out my review of that game. Well, basically what you're going to get here is a deluxe cab, which means it's going to be riserless. It's going to be fairly tall cab at 65 inches, something real close to that. You're going to get a lot of nice build things in this cab. You're going to get the 17-inch BOE monitor that we all know and love. You're going to get some really nice speakers. You're going to get an average marquee on this game, somewhere around like the T2 kind of marquee, where it's not totally crap, but it's not as good as something as you'll see on the Mortal Kombat Legacy Deluxe cab, which is just brilliant. It is a stand-up only cab, so if you are like me and you prefer a sit-down cab, you are sit out of luck because they just don't offer it. It does have a coin door with the chrome accents on like the locking mechanism and things like that, but there are no lights in the coin door. Likewise, there are no LED lights in the panel or anywhere else in the cab. So in terms of ultimate build quality, something like Tron is still going to be above this. Really, even a game like T2 is going to be above this. This game does come in at $5.99 as I record this in mid-May, and you can only buy it at Best Buy, at least for now. So don't look for any discounts on this game anytime soon. You probably won't see any price cuts on this game until late this year. I will say this, Ridge Racer did come down a little bit and Outrun did come down a little bit, but basically those games did stay at MSRP for big chunks of their sort of lifespan. So I wouldn't expect this game to drop in price a whole lot anytime soon. You're getting the same wheel from Ridge Racer, which is a good thing because it's a nice return center wheel, has the rumble effect on it, which apparently is very nice. You're getting a brilliant 4-way gear shifter that everyone is raving about, just really, really high class stuff in terms of the wheel, shifter, and screen. Although I do wish that this screen was 19-inch instead of 17-inch. On the negative side, it has the same pedals from Outrun and Ridge Racer, which are a bit jank. Now, I've owned my Outrun cab for a year and a half, going on 2 years. I've owned it for quite some time now, and the physical pedals are still working. The spring's still working, the plastic has not snapped off. However, the brake no longer works for whatever reason. Not sure if that's a hardware, software type thing. In terms of the software, what are you getting? Well, it's billed as having 2 games on it. It doesn't have 2 games. That's well known by this point. It is not the original Fast and Furious game at all. Has nothing to do with the original arcade game other than the side art, which does not feature the actors from the film because they couldn't get the rights to Paul Walker or Vin Diesel. But otherwise, the cap looked super, super slick, but you're not getting Fast and Furious. What you're getting is a port of Fast and Furious Drift, which is a pretty cool looking game and a fun game, but it is not the same ROM as the original arcade. So just be aware of that. It is a little bit false advertising from Arcade1up, both in the fact that it does not have 2 games. It's just Drift cut into 2. And it's not the original Fast and Furious ROM. In terms of the game itself, I would say this. I think it is probably the flashiest, best looking game from Arcade1up in terms of driving. The requirements for Fast and Furious obviously much more demanding than something like Rad Rally or any of the outrun type games, more demanding than Ridge Racer. So in that regard, it really is pushing Arcade1up's hardware to the limit. On the other hand, they have not increased or bettered the hardware that we've seen from other cabs. It is effectively the same type of hardware that you would see in an Outrun or a T2 or a Ridge Racer. It is not the next generation of that hardware. It is the exact same. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you're getting a 30 frames per second game that is heavily chopped down in terms of graphic fidelity. It will not look as good as something like an Xbox, PlayStation, or a PC. It definitely will not look as good as the original arcade game, especially because this isn't the original arcade game. But any way you look at it, you are not going to get the same kind of play value in terms of graphics that you would on a higher end system. So there's a little bit of a ding here. It's a little bit disappointing that really what might be the only new release from Arcade1up in 2023 does not have a better chipset. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of the episode. But anyway, what effect does that have on play value? Well, it turns out not to have very much effect at all. In fact, in my world, play value always trumps graphics. Now, maybe that is because I grew up on an Atari 2600 and a TI and a television, things like that. So I'm used to having dumbed down graphics versus hopefully better play value. But here you do have pretty good graphics. They're not at the best, but they are still pretty good. There is a wow effect to that, and there's a whole wow effect to this cabinet, and I'm also going to talk about it here in a second. In other words, it's delivering an arcade-like experience in terms of play value, but it is not delivering an arcade type experience in terms of graphic fidelity. If that matters to you, then this is maybe not the game, but if, like me, that does not matter anywhere as much as play value, then this is maybe something you ought to take a look at. And I've saved perhaps the most interesting aspect of this cab for last, and that is the fact that you can hook up to 4 separate machines together in the same room or same house and play up to 4 different players all on the same track. Anyway, it is a brand new thing to Arcade1up, and to me offers a lot of potential if you really want to play a 2-player game in a driving game. This is the way to go. And yeah, while it would be pricey, talking about maybe $1,300 after taxes and everything and the cords that you'd have to get, it's still a unique experience in a really good looking cab that offers a lot of play value and a lot of wow effect. It is interesting that this right now, as of late May 2023, this is the only new title that we are seeing from Arcade1up. Yes, we're seeing new deluxe cabs from the legacy lineup, the slanted screen, the riserless design, but the reality is those games are all still exactly the same game lineups that we've already seen in the past. So we're not seeing any new games, just a slightly different, slightly better form factor, but definitely not miles ahead of what we've seen in the other legacy cabs. And if the rumors are right that Big Buck Hunter is going to be the shooting game that Arcade1up releases this year, but just in the bigger deluxe form factor, then again, it's more evidence that if you want to play a new game from Arcade1up, this is the only show in town. I hope that's not true. I hope that we do see some other titles that aren't just Big Buck Hunter or retreads coming down the line, but right now, as of the end of May, that is the case. If you need to know more or want to see actual people who own this game, please check out 19K Fox, who did a really good technical review of this. She-Line has a very good, entertaining video, PD7. There's a couple other people out there who have really good videos, so be sure and check all those out. If you like this kind of content, please give me a thumbs up on the way out the door. It really does help this channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell. Love each other, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the Game Shack. Mwah!
Be sure to visit evilgeniusentertainment.com for exclusive content, swag, casting call news, and much more.